What is up, everybody? It's Olson and Treese with Delta Consulting here with another video for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about wearing all the hats and how to choose the right seats and positions as you build and grow your company. How are you doing today, Treese?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Not too bad, man. So, I guess just to get us started, I feel like this topic is something we kind of touch on a lot, but we don't dive very deep on, which is, we always talk about how most small business owners are wearing every hat in their company and trying to do everything. So I guess to start, tell me about your experience when your company was this size and what it felt like, and when you realized it was time to change.
So I actually did it wrong first, which is not something you probably expected me to say. But so the first thing I did was brought on a partner. And the idea was I was going to handle the office, the sales, the designs, all of that. And he was going to manage all of the production. Unfortunately, I did not know exactly how to what extent you need to talk about separation of work and roles and responsibilities and having all of the possibilities out. And eventually what happened is his attention to detail, level of execution, and desire to grow did not match mine. And long story short, he left a house open in February. Not wide open, but we installed a door. This house was a whole house of windows and doors, and we installed a door. I had to leave early to go to another appointment. He was supposed to finish up, and he didn't insulate the door where you could see daylight coming through when it was like 6 degrees outside. And the client called screaming at me at 6 a.m. when she went to let her dog out and noticed. And when I called him out on it, he said, "It sounds like your expectations are different than mine." And I said, "What should we do?" And he said, "Well, if all your frustrations are because of me, we should probably separate." And I said, "Cool. That's awesome. Let's do that." And so we separated.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of people have had struggles with partnerships, especially when they're with friends or family or people that you know, and it's hard. I mean, there are a lot of guys out there that say you should never have a business partner, and then there are business partnerships that work out great, but a lot of the ones I hear about end up like the one you're talking about.
I think I don't think most of the time partnerships should happen at the infancy of your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
A great example of that is you and I, right?
Yeah.
So this guy that I had a partnership with, we talked very little. I mean, we talked about like overall stuff, and we had I brought him into the operating agreement, and we did all of that legally. But as far as like division of roles, compensation, and profit sharing, and plans for growing and scaling, that wasn't ever discussed. Whereas when you and I started talking about this, we talked about all of those eventualities. We talked about what's it look like if we disagree? What's it look like? And not even if we disagree, but when we disagree, what's it look like if something happens to one of us? What's it look like, for all of these eventualities that I didn't have enough experience to know that I needed to ask about.
Yeah. And I like the way you put that, because the more I think about it, I totally agree with you, because most of the business partnerships you hear about that work out really well are two more experienced entrepreneurs that know their strengths and weaknesses. They know what they're good at. They know what they want to do, and they know how to clearly communicate expectations, clearly communicate possibilities, and they know all the things that can go wrong. So they know to bring them up and talk about them in advance. Whereas a lot of the new business owners are just like, "Oh, you're better at swinging a hammer than I am. I'm better at selling jobs than you are. So let's work together." And they don't really cover any of the other details.
Right.
So that's a really good point, and I think that's a good golden nugget of advice. It's not that business partnerships are bad; it's that when you don't know what you don't know, you can get yourself in trouble pretty easily and end up in a situation where you don't want to work together anymore.
Yeah. And I think, like, obviously there's different scenarios. If you and I are sitting around a campfire smoking a cigar and we come up with some new product, then sure, it makes sense to be partners from the beginning. But in a situation like where I was, I had an existing company, but I needed to scale it. And rather than trying to scale it that way, I should have done what we're going to talk about next. And I should have taken off hats slowly and just grown at a slower rate, or been willing to take home less money in order to invest back into the company faster. Whereas bringing someone on that has, even now, like, the only way someone's getting ownership of my company is if they buy in. Right.
Yeah, you have to either
And
have capital or a skill valuable enough to you that you need that person to grow, which I don't
well,
think is
even,
really common in construction. I mean, if you're talking about software or something, it makes sense. But
yeah, I think the only way I would do it is if someone had an existing company and we were merging them.
yeah,
Right. So a great example of that is like when you and I started this, I had some pre-existing clients and you had some pre-existing clients.
mhm,
Well, rather than figuring out the ugliness of how that all sets, we just set our operating agreement up to be in a manner that anything from before our agreement
mhm,
stays with us.
yep,
And then everything we scale together afterwards is part of this joint venture.
yeah,
And that
and
makes sense to me.
yeah, and I guess what I was getting at is like I'm trying to think of a good example, but an example to me of where skills would matter more than buy-in would be like I don't know, like to make it really simple, if you own a pressure washing company and you don't know anything about cleaning windows, and you could bring on a partner that has 20 years of experience cleaning windows and the contacts and the knowledge of the industry to get you into commercial window cleaning, something that would drastically impact your revenue and bottom line and profit, where that person's role in the company makes sense for them to be an owner. Like you're essentially going to double the size of your company by that person exists.
I still think
I get
even in your scenario, I would rather,
hire them.
well, in my mind, yes, one, hire them, or two, if you
Yeah.
can't afford them, hire a coach to teach you the same things.
Yeah.
The only time I could see your scenario being where you had to bring them on as an owner was would be if they had something proprietary.
Mm,
If they had
yeah.
a proprietary, so in your power washing deal, if they had a proprietary chemical, so like I'm
Mhm.
not a big chemical guy, but I know there used to be a surfactant that went in car washes that is now illegal in the
Yep.
States. And it was really popular in foam cannons. Well, I know now, like if someone came up with a new thing that was legal
Mhm.
that would give us a step up from any of the competitors, then okay, maybe it makes sense to bring them on.
Yeah. So
But I'm so,
and I guess you're right. I guess the more I think about it, really all the scenarios where that would make sense to me, like, oh, they have contracts with all the existing clients, or they have all the contacts in the area you want to expand in, or whatever. At that point, it really is a merger, not a partnership, because they're really bringing in their own clientele, merging in with your clientele. So you're essentially absorbing them, like you're buying them out. You're not
so
really,
that's what I was going to say is I would want to
yeah,
buy them.
yeah, and that's the thing is like I guess in that situation, really what you're doing is you're acquiring a business, and the owner comes with it. So like, yeah, they may or may
Yeah.
not be a partner versus employee versus profit sharing, whatever the setup looks like, but it does make sense because really they aren't. You're not really you're not really bringing them on as a partner just because of what they have. You're really merging their company, if you will.
Well, and I think you actually brought up a really good point, and it kind of made me hop skip a couple steps away. This entire conversation is precluded on a 50-50 partnership.
That's
I'm not
true.
a
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to giving someone a minority ownership as long as
Mhm.
I still have decision making power.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I've heard of those kind of arrangements multiple times that have worked out really well. Like a great example is I've had roofing companies over the years that have wanted to acquire me because they want to build a maintenance division in their company. And I've never
Sure.
really entertained them, but like I imagine that those offers would come along with a profit sharing or an equity distribution or a transitionary role where I work for them for a couple of years or something like that. Where if you're acquiring them, but you're not really merging as much as you're acquiring them, and you might give them a 3, 5, 10% share, then that makes more sense.
I think in acquisitions that's pretty common. I mean, I've heard
Mhm.
of I by no means know a bunch of people who have been acquired or have done acquiring, but I've talked to a fair few, and almost all of them stayed on for at least a year through the acquisition to help transition everybody over.
Yeah, well, and it makes a lot of sense because, like, when I've thought about it and considered it, if somebody wanted to buy my company and they wanted to acquire me, and they were going to say, give me a profit distribution off of what my company made them in the future, me being on board with them for 6 months, a year, 2 years afterwards would benefit both of us because it would set them up for future success, but it would theoretically make me more money because I would be able to set up the transition to be as successful as possible, and then my distribution would be higher. So
Yeah.
it would incentivize both directions in an acquisition for the owner to stay on. If it was I don't like the word takeover, it sounds hostile, but but like an acquisition where you're not really merging 50-50 as much as like a large company buys your small company.
Yeah.
So, well, I think we got a little bit off track. I think this is a great topic, though. I think we need to do a whole conversation about this someday. But besides partnerships, mergers, acquisitions, what I really wanted to dig into with this is when you were first starting out and when you have restarted and started new companies, when did you realize in that transitionary phase that you were wearing all the hats and wanted to start handing them off?
How about we phrase the question like this? When is an appropriate time to start looking at taking off hats for the person who might not know if they're ready or not yet?
Yeah, I can do that.
And the reason I say it that way is because when did I know? Too late is the honest answer.
Fair.
I think when you say when did you realize or when did you know something as you're growing, especially self-servingly, we own a coaching company.
Yeah.
We want to help you realize those decisions need to be made and then make those decisions faster than you're capable of making that realization on your own.
Yeah, and I guess that's a poorly worded question because what I'm really asking you is when did you realize that it was already too late? Like it's not very good phrasing because I guess a better way to phrase it would be looking back on it. When would you have taken more hats off, or when would you have?
If I was doing it again, I would start taking off hats as soon as I had the capital to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would have done at the beginning is figured out my personal budget and said, okay, I need to make this much. So let's just say back then we were a young family. We didn't need a lot. Let's say I needed to pay myself $1,000 a week. 52 grand a year. Our family pre-COVID, inflation hadn't gone crazy. We could survive. We had my stepson 50% of the time, and we had a child on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So not a ton of expense, right? We need $1,000 a week to survive. We lived in a tiny little apartment. So I would say if I could go back, I would recognize that number. And then as soon as I was hitting that number, I would stash everything away to reinvest in the company as fast as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And I would start with taking off the stuff that is the least valuable from a dollar per hour standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Another way to say that is the least skill set required tasks.
The things that are simplest to delegate, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Answering the phones, answering emails, setting calendar appointments, and receiving the mail, different stuff like that. Those would be the first things I took off. And now, back then, I didn't know about this, but now I would do that with a virtual assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my follow-up question. Is I know back then you didn't know about VAs, but if you had known about VAs back then, would you have brought one on as your first person you hired, more or less?
No. Would I have? No. Should I have? Yes. And I think that's because one thing we don't talk enough about is the growth you have in mindset over the years. I would have had that standard fear-based mindset that says, no, I need someone in-house. I need someone physically present. Or how can I trust someone all the way across the world that's just sitting behind a computer screen? Because you hear about scams and da-da-da-da. And I wasn't educated enough to know, okay, there's Screenshot Monitor, there's this, there's, LastPass, there's all these tools that allow you to trust your people, but verify that trust is earned. And then over time, like now my executive assistant has my credit card. He knows he can spend X without asking. And if it's above that, he needs to ask for my permission. And then we go from there.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because I feel the same way about my EA and my office manager. I mean, my VAs have access to everything short of my bank account. and they eventually will probably have that too if they keep It's just it's kind of wild how over time you build a lot of trust with them, and they prove themselves over and over and over. So
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
definitely they're a very valuable part of the team.
But I think so. I would obviously take that off first, and then I would make a decision. And I think this is where you start to get the favorite line of any coach, and the answer is that depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's business coaching, fitness coaching, life coaching, whatever.
All of it.
It's
Yeah.
always going to depend based on the stuff. And so I would say once you've taken the admin stuff off of your plate, then it's time to decide what do you enjoy. And you should be doing the things, assuming that they are a similar value
Mm-hmm.
or similar importance. You should be doing the thing that you enjoy the most. And so for me, I hired a project manager next because I didn't enjoy the production side compared to the sales and design side. Hire a project manager, take that, do that slowly, make sure they're trained, write at least guidelines. Another conversation we can have that's not dedicated to this, but when we're at Job Trade Connect, listen to Mike Claudio talk about not necessarily needing SOPs, which you and I have been big SOP people for a long time. But what he said really made sense. And basically, the highlight of that is don't be so distracted by the process of writing SOPs that you don't get the actual work done, because at the stage that we are, most SOPs are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably won't change every month or two, but every 6 or 12 months, the SOP will get different if you're scaling. So there's no point in writing 200 SOPs just to every 6 months have to rewrite them all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this kind of conversation that you're having right now is really intriguing to me, because I think that when we talk to the majority of our clients, would you say most of them want to get out of the field and back into the office, or out of the office and into the field?
Almost exclusively out of the field into the office.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I thought that was kind of everybody, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to not be on the tools and in the truck every day. I wanted to have time to be in the office and sell. But I've actually had 2, if not 3 clients in the last 6 months tell me the opposite, which is one of them in particular is a very good example. He's a highly analytical, highly detailed engineer type guy. His background before owning a contracting company was he was the quality control manager for a food production company, and he is just wicked smart. And what his biggest struggle is that he has the office dialed, but he has hired and fired like 3 different production managers, and all of them, the reason he got rid of them is because they didn't have enough attention to detail and things went sideways. Like the example he gave me most recently, the guy he fired recently, there was an issue where there was not enough, the floor wasn't level enough in a master bath before tile got there. They sent out the framing crew and they added some OSB or something like that to level the floor. Didn't give me very much details, but essentially did a rush job to get the floor level between the pan and the rest of the bathroom. The tile guys came in and laid tile, and they were back there 3 months later to do another bathroom. And while they were there, the customer said, "Hey, can you come look at my master bathroom? When I step on some of the tiles around the shower, they move." And he walked in and there was literally like a half inch of like squeezing up and down where the subfloor was flexing, and there was a gap, because what he assumes is that they threw some subfloor down but didn't glue it or screw it. They just threw nails in. And his project manager was on site at the time the framing crew did this before the tile guys started working. And he was just so upset that the product manager didn't bother to double check the work or look at it or check with the framing crew, check with the tile guys. Like, that so many things happened without anybody catching it. And it resulted in him having to retile that whole floor and cost him like $10,000. And what he is convinced of is that if he can get out of the office and back into the field, if he can replace himself in the office, that he is going to be the best. And he actually enjoys the detail work of managing production. And it's funny because I've had a couple of those recently, but I think for most people, it's the opposite. They're tired of being on the bags and they want to be in the office.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not unheard of, but it happens. I've talked to people that way, and you can do it that way. My immediate point of contention with that guy is going to be cool. So you're only going to be as big as the amount of projects that you personally can manage.
Yeah. and I actually asked him that question, and his response was, "Well, my intention would be it would be just me for a while, but then I could personally train somebody to have my level of detail." And I didn't want to disagree with that, but I also think that's a little bit unrealistic.
I think it's probably not unrealistic to do over time. I just think it's definitely not the most efficient way.
It feels like it's creating a bottleneck for growth.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is creating a bottleneck. He's self-imposing a bottleneck because he's unwilling to get uncomfortable and write the processes.
Mm-hmm.
So a better way to do that, because one thing I've learned is common sense isn't so common. And so you would think, hey, it's subfloor, but as I'm talking about it, what do most framers do for subfloor when they're framing the house? They nail it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other side of that is to do it correctly, it's typically glued down and then nailed down. So you do have two sets of fasteners. So if they miss the glue phase, then yeah. But if you want it screwed off on, it could very easily be an SOP. The standard operating procedure for us is we go back and screw down subfloor anywhere that tile is going to lay over it.
Mm-hmm. Or at least like anywhere there's going to be tile over it, it needs to be either glued and nailed or screwed. Like it has to have a level of security that you know it's not going to move over. And especially in that situation, because it had to do with, I guess the whole room had a slight slope to it, and that's why the tile guy couldn't lay tile. And in a situation like that where it's irregular and funky to start with, and you're not going to tear the whole thing up, rebuild it, and put it back together, you've got to have some level of redundancy to ensure that the tile doesn't move.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that's a very good point. Like that, could that have been fixed with an SOP for the framers? Was it on the project manager for not catching it? Was it on the tile guy for not saying, "Hey, this is jacked up"? Like it's what he felt like is there was 3 or 4 different people that should have caught it and nobody did. So he wants to be that guy. and
So he wants to be the guy.
Yeah.
So he wants to be the guy that has ownership rather than making it a point of culture in your company that everybody has ownership.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I pushed him on. Was I pushed him and I said, what you're doing is you're creating a situation where the buck stops with you, which is true. As the owner of the company, you hold supreme ownership of everything. But you also need to develop, build, and train your team to also take ownership in their roles and responsibilities. Because if you're going to grow and replace roles in your companies, everything from an office assistant all the way up to a project or operations manager, if they don't take ownership of their responsibilities and you didn't tell them to, hold them accountable and show them how to do it, or have protocols and SOPs for it, then it still really is your fault at the end.
Everything's our fault at the end of the day, but that shouldn't be a reason not to have a sense of ownership as part of your culture.
Yeah, and I guess what I was getting at is like he feels like it seemed like he felt like that wasn't an option. And I kept pushing him and I was like, it sounds like you need a difference in culture, a difference in training, a difference in policy. You taking the role of somebody that should be trainable or buildable is not the answer. It is in the short term, but it's going to create a bottleneck where in the long run you can't grow.
Yeah. Sage advice does not have to be taken well. That's on him, not on the coach.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just an interesting interaction, interesting client, because it really does kind of fulfill this example that we're talking about today, where when you want to give away hats in your company, and you were talking about doing things that you like, it's an interesting kind of catch-22 where sometimes the thing you like and the thing that you're good at is the thing that you don't hire for or you don't train people for, and then you become the bottleneck.
Yes, but we also didn't finish that conversation before you went on this tangent, because the conversation isn't only hire the things that you don't enjoy doing and then do the things you enjoy doing forever.
Of course.
The rest of that conversation is hire what you don't enjoy doing first, and eventually then, like, if you scale correctly, you should never have more than a certain number of people reporting directly to you. And so as you scale, by definition, your role is going to get more and more elevated, because if you have 5 people that all report to you, cool. But when you have 10, you don't have time to get to all of them.
Yeah,
So you
it's a lot
need
of human.
3 to handle those 10. And
Mhm.
then that 3 can grow to 5. And then that 5 grows to 7, 8, 9, 10 again. And you have to have another layer. And that's where middle management comes in. But you still have to have that ability, because for you to be effective at your job, you can only have so many people that are reporting to you, at least in the sense of like actually reporting, right? Like
Yeah,
one CEO may be able to take on 5 executives, where one department manager might be able to have 30 people working for him, because their
exactly.
job
Yeah.
is substantially more autonomous and the reporting is based in the software or whatever.
Yeah, span of control is adjustable. I mean, it's the same thing. Like fire department example, span of control is a lot different when you're talking about a crew in a burning building working versus a chief outside keeping track of 10 crews that are operating in different areas. Span
Correct.
of control has to be adjustable based on the task being performed and what's being reported, obviously.
Yep.
So, well, I guess we've been on a lot of tangents, so we've made it. We're a little bit over time for what I was planning on, but I think it's a good conversation. I like it when tangents actually feel like they're quality. But
I didn't know we were on a timeline anyway.
no, we're really not. What we're getting to kind of is where I want to transition to. How do you, when you have a client ask you, or when people ask us in our group, who should I hire first? They're a one
Mhm.
man show, or they have a couple employees. They're trying to decide, do I hire somebody for the office? Do I hire a salesman? Do I hire a project manager? Do I hire more crew members? Like, besides the fact of hiring things that are the lowest skill or that you don't like first, how do you work with somebody when they want to work through that decision of choosing who to hire?
I feel like you're asking the same question just in a different way. So my answer would still be the original one. But if you needed another way to look at it, I guess you could say do a time audit and then take away the things that are the least valuable that take up the most amount of your time.
Okay, so I guess let me rephrase that. So, like, let's say that you delegated some of those base level tasks. This person already has a VA or has an office assistant,
Okay,
and
so
they're
now we're
looking.
not talking about our first hire anymore.
Yeah, and I guess I that was a confusing way to ask that. I guess not necessarily the first hire, but as you're growing, how do you decide
Mhm.
who to hire next? Is a better way to phrase it. When you're looking at multiple roles and you still have multiple hats, and you've already hired some people.
So
When you're
give me a
looking at what are they
specific
going to do?
example, because I feel like my advice is still sound for this question too.
Okay, so let me give you an example. So you're talking to an owner who is a one man show or has a couple field employees. They've hired a VA and they've got some office tasks delegated. They now
Cool.
are still selling jobs. They're still trying to do the accounting and bookkeeping. They're still trying to manage the field. And they're like, shoot, do I hire a project manager? Do I hire a bookkeeper? Do I hire an office manager? Do I manage my assistant? Like, who do I hire next?
I mean, in that scenario, you hire a bookkeeper.
Mhm.
That's going to be the least cost. That's going to be the least cost to take the most timely things off of your plate.
So I guess is that the way you would view it, no matter what level you get to? Like
Is
how
what?
how far along before you start having to make decisions that are based not on just what's the easiest to delegate? So like maybe this person has their bookkeeper, they have their VA, they have an office assistant, but they've got 4 or 5 guys in the field, and they're trying to decide between a project manager, a salesman, or more office staff.
You look at the bottleneck. So that's
What?
the question you're trying to get to. Okay. Okay, I got it. So let's ask the question this way. You have a baseline of things. You enjoy all of the tasks that you still have left, but you don't have enough time to get them all done.
Yep.
How do you decide who to hire next?
Yeah,
You look at where the
I'm good with that.
bottleneck is.
Okay,
So
so tell
you
me.
look at in the instance you have project management, you have sales,
Mhm,
you have marketing,
mhm,
right? Let's say those are the 3 hats you have left. And then you have CEO, right? Like
mhm.
we have to remember we'll just say C-suite in general. Like you
Yeah,
still have to be the CEO, you still have to be a COO, you still have to be
yeah.
the CFO. Like,
Business
but
management, the actual management of the company as a whole.
this is one, I think it's really important for people to remember this guy, because this is the one that no one accounts for time wise.
Mhm,
You still have to, like, the whole point of delegating to all these things is so you have time to run your company.
Yep.
Because running your company takes time. And especially when you start looking at things like making sure you have an employee handbook and not just having ChatGPT or Claude or whoever write one and then immediately implementing it. Cool.
Mhm.
ChatGPT can write one, but then you need to go through and read it, redline it, make adjustments, fit it to your culture. That stuff takes time.
Yep.
And while I love AI, whole nother conversation, you can't rely on it for everything.
Mhm.
So, but in those, you have those four, right?
Yep.
I would go back to a time audit and I would
Mhm.
say, where am I spending the most of my time,
Mhm.
or what tasks are consistently not getting done?
Yeah.
So typically in this instance, marketing or sales are going to be what falls through,
Mhm.
because people are going to make sure their jobs run smoothly. We're going to
Yep.
make sure the people that already have given us money are being taken care of. So
Mhm.
then I would look at, okay, do I bring on a marketing company? And then you look at what good marketing companies cost and you get recommendations and you interview them. Or you look at, what's a sales guy cost? And then you look at your pricing and you make sure you have room to pay commission and you look at all that. And then you make a decision. And so I think in that instance, typically for me, I would encourage you to offboard the marketing, because really a good marketing company is going to be a wild value compared to what you could get for hiring an in-house person.
Mhm.
You already have a team. So part of your culture should be capturing media. You should be doing photos on the job. Your project manager should be taking videos. You should be going out and doing videos and Facebook Lives and things like that for the free marketing side. But if you're ready to start investing in the Google pay-per-click, Facebook ads, Google LSA, SEO, all of these things, one, that's probably such a foreign concept past very high level non-detail stuff that you basically would have to spend 3 to 12 months, depending on how much time you have dedicated to it, to learning that skill set.
Mhm.
And, I think my marketing guy is like $3,000 a month for SEO and to manage SEO and Google ads.
Mhm. Pretty
That
normal range.
that $3,000 a month. So let's say I'm super swamped. It's going to take me 12 months. If you don't think you can recoup $36,000 by hiring a marketing person to then focus on just actually touching every lead that comes in,
Mhm.
you're crazy.
Yeah, I agree. It's
So
it's usually a very high ROI, like return on that money that you spend.
so I would hire a marketing company there. And then, okay, now I'm project managing and selling.
Mhm.
And then I would just look at, again, what do I enjoy and what takes the most of my time? Because if I'm consistently missing stuff on projects, or let's say a more common one, I'm new to bigger projects and someone needs to be on site because we're building that culture. So
Mhm.
I need my project manager sitting on site when that sub goes to put that, when the framers go to put that subfloor down, to make sure that they glue it, to make sure that they screw it. That takes time, right?
Mhm.
Well, I don't have time as the owner who's project managing and selling to stand there and watch them do that for 2 hours because I have a sales call that I have to go get to.
Mhm.
Okay. So then in that case, I hire a project manager and I make sure that I go through an actual process and I look at personalities and I make sure that he's going to be a good fit and I bring that off. But if I'm always on site and I'm always working projects and I'm taking care of these clients and I'm only getting back to 7 out of 10 people that call me, if you're an average closer, you close at about 30%.
Mhm.
Which means if you only call 7 out of 10 back, you're leaving one sale untouched.
Mhm.
Not one lead, one sale.
Yep.
So if your average ticket size is 50K, every time you don't call 3 people back, you just gave up $50,000 in revenue.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So I know the people listening, one of the things they're going to ask is, well, what if I need a project manager, I need a sales guy, I need marketing, but I can only afford one and not the other, even though that one is the bottleneck? At what point does financial ability to pay for the position trump which one you actually feel like you need?
Let's phrase that a different way.
At what point does whether or not you feel like you can afford it matter
Mhm.
more than whether you feel like you're not unique?
Can I argue with you on a better point?
Sure.
The moment you're making decisions in your business based on feelings, you've already failed.
I don't disagree with that. I guess let me add to that a little bit. You feel like you're really good at sales and that you can
Mhm.
do a better job keeping sales and delegating project management. But you
Cool.
know that a project manager is going to cost you a lot more than a salesman. At what point
Mhm.
does that concern of the cost actually matter versus realizing that you do actually need to hire a person?
So we're going to look at that as a symptom, right? Because cash flow is a symptom. Cash flow is king, first and
Yep.
foremost. Like cash flow and profitability, bar none.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons that I actually would caution people to grow slower than what they might be capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we've gotten to the point that we're buried there, but we don't have the money to expand,
That's the problem.
something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to look at what's wrong.
Yep.
And it might be something's too right, right? Like the other side of that is, and here's an example of it. Right now, I'm doing project management, sales, marketing. I go hire Adam McChesney. Oh my God, now I have 200% more leads a month. So I was getting 10 leads. Now I'm getting 30.
Yep.
Well, I can only get back to 15 of them.
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Okay. Right. So now I have to decide, do I make that investment in a project manager and trust that we'll stay ahead of it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I talk to Adam and say, hey, can we turn my Google ad spend down? Is it just SEO that's turning this many? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the answer is just I need to work 100 hours a week to make sure I have the cash to go the next step. Like we're entrepreneurs, suck it up and do it sometimes.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because I think one of the reasons I asked that question is because I waited way too long to hire some positions because I felt like I couldn't afford to hire them. But in reality, I realized as soon as that person started working a couple months later that not only do they pay for themselves, but they usually drastically increase revenue and profit if you're hiring the right person.
So the whole reason I always go back to looking at a time audit and taking the least dollar wise value tasks off your plate 1st
Mm-hmm.
is because that should be the case for every hire.
Mm-hmm.
Every hire within a certain short time period should pay for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single position where that's not the case.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is I think people fail to recognize that. They fail to recognize that a salesman does cost money, but that salesman's going to bring in a ton of additional work. A project manager does cost money, but that project manager being there and avoiding 1, 2, 3 mistakes a month that cost you a lot of money usually pay for themselves. And that
So
project
I'm in a
manager
feisty
increases
mood.
efficiency.
I'm in a feisty mood. You okay if I challenge you?
Do it.
Why does a sales guy cost money?
It's wording. I say every position in your company, there's not a single position in your company that you should view as a cost as compared to an investor. But I'm speaking
No,
from
just
a
flat
perspective.
out. Why does a sales guy cost you anything at the beginning?
Mainly because when I've hired salesmen, I've always paid them a base wage. So I know
that's where I expected you to go.
I know that first couple of months is basically a write off because they're not going to sell immediately and that it takes time to train them. And when I looked, I couldn't find a candidate that fit my culture and the kind of person I wanted that was willing to work for commission.
So that's fair, right?
Yeah.
I would say, in my mind, a sales guy should never be able to live off his base pay.
Oh, for sure.
Like I pay my base guy, I pay my sales guys a base pay of $20K a year.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally so that they can buy groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them that. I want to make sure you don't go hungry.
Mhm.
But you surviving and you being successful is our job together.
Mhm.
It is not my job to provide that for you. It is my job to provide the opportunity for you to go get it.
Yep. And that's the same way I did. I can't remember exactly what it was, but my first sales guy's base wage was somewhere around 30,000. And he ended up selling $1 million worth of work in his first year. But he didn't start selling projects consistently until he had worked with me for probably 2 or 3 months. And he went to a lot of appointments with me, shadowed me, learned to do the job, learned how to sell. And it also depends on what kind of sales guy you hire. Because in my situation, I hired a guy who was phenomenal at sales, but
Mhm.
didn't know construction. So I had to teach him how to sound like somebody that knew construction, so that when he was
Sure.
selling jobs, people knew that he actually knew what he was talking about. How to demo products, how to compare and contrast different qualities and features, how to explain the difference between different levels of composite decking and why some of them are better than others. And I sent him to trainings, I sent him to sales training, sent him to demos with different suppliers, things like that. And within a few months, he was doing really good.
So I'll give you one other thing. One of my clients manages a company that they go in home and sell something and sell a product.
Mhm.
His average salesperson makes between 20 and 30K a month.
Mhm.
There's no base pay, and you're guaranteed not to make a single dollar for 8 weeks
Mhm.
because that's what training is. And you go to training for free.
Yep.
He doesn't have a lot of candidates that are willing to come to training,
Mhm.
but his success rate for people that make it through are wild. So I
Mhm.
tell you that story because a lot of times we have this preconceived notion, and you even did it. I couldn't find a candidate,
Mhm.
which means in the specific time frame you were looking,
Yep.
in the way you were looking, you didn't find someone.
Yeah. I
But
interviewed a
that
decent
doesn't
amount of
mean
people.
right, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
No, of course. And I wouldn't assume that. I just
I'm talking
I
for
didn't
the
find
listeners, not for you.
yeah, I didn't find one in that time period, but I looked because I had heard a lot about commission only positions. And the people I knew that work in sales, I asked them straight up. I was like, "Hey, if I made you a job offer where you made zero base pay, but you had the potential of making 200 to 300K a year, would you take it?" And all of them said yes. But then when I actually advertised the position, I got lots of candidates, and every single one of them was like, "No, I can't leave my current job without having a guaranteed base pay because I've got a mortgage, or I've got kids, or I've got a family, or I've got whatever." And I know that it's different when you're hiring young and hungry guys versus experienced salesmen. I know that it's different if you're hiring somebody with experience in the industry versus somebody that doesn't. And it was really interesting to me how I got a very wide variety of candidates. I got everything from guys that knew construction inside and out but had no sales experience, all the way to people that had 10, 15 years of sales experience but had never picked up a hammer in their life. And it was very interesting.
Yeah. I think there's always opportunities, but that's one of the other reasons I caution people not to grow really fast is because then if you are in a spot where it takes you, how long did you hire for that position before you offered it?
About 3 months, probably about 90 days.
Before you offered anyone the position?
Yeah, I didn't offer a single person a position in the first couple of months. But I was
Okay.
still selling myself. I was the only salesman, and I was in a position where sales was the last major thing I hadn't delegated. I had hired a project manager. I had 3 crews running every day. I had an office manager handling the front desk. So my main job was to sell and then run the company. And I was at a point where I wanted to grow, but I was, long story short, I was doing about 1.5 million, forecasting about 2 million the following year. And I wanted to raise that forecast to 3 plus, but I knew I couldn't take that many appointments and sell that much work by myself. So I
Fair.
wanted to hire a salesman to increase the potential of hitting that goal revenue number,
Fair.
because we
Yeah.
had the production capacity, but I didn't think I could sell that much work without somebody else working with me. And I thought about hiring like a lead handler or hiring a prep guy to do all the steps of the sales process besides the sales appointments. But I mean, I was already at a point where I was taking 4 to 6 sales calls a day and running 2 or 3 sales appointments a day. And it just didn't feel like I had enough hours in the day to do that without hiring somebody to help.
Sure. The only thing I'll push you on that is the amount of times you have said feel, and we shouldn't be basing business decisions on feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will tell you that when I say I felt some way, it usually meant I had stared at a lot of data and I was making a gut decision based off of I've looked at a shitload of spreadsheets and data and I feel like this isn't feasible.
Yeah, it's just important for us to be very clear with how we translate because the people who are listening don't know that about you.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, that is a very good clarification. So like when I decided to hire a sales guy, I had looked at my revenue, my closing rates, my profitability, my number of sales appointments versus number of booked calls versus number of sales. And I did the math on how many sales appointments would I have to take per day in order to reach $3 million in revenue. And there wasn't enough hours in the day. So I felt like the only way I could do it was hire another person based on the data.
Well, and it probably is true. But I think it's really important for people to see I looked at data and that data drove a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably something that I say just because I've always been a data-driven decisions person. But I use that data to make decisions, but I still have to make the decision. So I say, oh, I felt like this was the right decision. But the reason I felt that way is because I had looked at the data.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
it's funny. Another quick side tangent, but I kind of like that we go on side tangents. I think people enjoy that as well because it's more relatable. But the things that people need to look at when they're making those decisions is definitely important too. Like you can't look at how much did I close. You did it correctly. You can't say, oh, well, I've closed this much. In order to close the next amount, I need this. You might close at 27% over 100 sales reps, and then you might close at 37% over the next 100 because 100 really isn't that many.
Yeah, agreed. The more data you have, the better. And it's a bad idea to make decisions off of data when you have a limited amount of data.
Well, and even more so, what the point I was getting to was you shouldn't be making decisions based on lagging indicator data.
Yeah, agreed.
So a great example, had someone reach out to me, a fitness trainer, right? Hey, if I promised, and he stays in touch and we talk, cool. Hey, if I wrote you a plan and and I guaranteed it would do this and this and this. Well, you can't guarantee that. You can guarantee that I am going to be planned to work out this many days and I'm going to eat this many calories and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And the result should be Y. But you can't say, well, what did you do? Or why did you make the decision to lose this many pounds? Well, I didn't make the decision to lose the weight. I made the decision to do the activities that led to weight loss.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because that's a sales tactic. It works. Like there's a lot of people that sell guarantees, but if you read the fine print, the stipulations of what you have to do to qualify for that guarantee are very high.
Sure. I was having this conversation again for the listener because when we're looking at data, here's a great example, right? I fired my last sales guy. In 90 days, he sold about 200 grand worth of work. Does that sound terrible?
I mean, what I know about your company, it sounds a little bit low.
No. Try and ignore that part. But if I just say a sales guy came in,
days sounds okay.
Sounds reasonable, right?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable.
What if I told you that was only 3 jobs out of 121 leads I gave him?
Then it sucks.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
The lagging indicator is the dollar sold, not terrible. But when you look at the opportunities, the leading indicators, it becomes atrocious.
Yeah, when you look at the dollar amount sold, it's not bad, but when you look at it as a percentage of potential revenue, it's horrible. Because what's the potential revenue of 121 leads for you? Like $2 million.
So our average ticket, and this is why it's important to know your numbers. Our average ticket last year was $57,000.
Okay,
and some change, right? Our average close rate was about 38%. So if I took 111 leads.
Either 111 or 121.
I think it was 121. So if I say 121 times 0.38 to get to 38% close rate means I'm going to sell 46 jobs.
Yep.
Times $57,000 should be 2.6 million.
Yeah. So not even 10%.
Correct.
Like 8%.
Correct.
So when and if your average closing rate is 37% and his closing rate is 8%, that means that he's
His
selling.
was like 2%.
Oh yeah, I'm not carrying a 1, but yeah. So his closing rate is not even 10% of what yours was historically.
Correct.
Crazy.
And so that's just a great example of why it matters what data we pay attention to.
Yeah.
It's the classic example of what's more important, revenue or profit.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's so excited to have a $3 million company, a $10 million company, a $100 million company.
Mm-hmm.
But with headaches and everything, you give me a $2 million company where I make 400 grand. I'll take that all day long over a $10 million company where I make 200 grand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, man. I mean, a lot of the listeners have heard me talk about it, but that's why I do service work and not GC work, because I felt like the profit margins were better and I was making the same amount of money on half the revenue. And I'm sure part of that is the fact that I didn't have a very efficient operation on the GC side, and I had a lot of work to do to get my profit margins up. But it's crazy that the average profit margin in the general contracting world nationwide is under 10%, and the average profit margin in service is 25 to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So you can theoretically make the same amount of money on a third of the revenue. So, like, if you ask the average person listening, would you rather make $100,000 off of $1 million or $100,000 off of 500K? I mean, it makes sense. I understand why there's some people that like service over GC work and vice versa. It's stress versus reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're running a lot along on time, so let's wrap it up. I guess at the end of the day, we've talked about a lot of different things. We've talked about business partnerships. We've talked about hiring. We've talked about who to hire first and then how to progressively hire as you move along. To wrap it all up in a bow, what would you say the number one takeaway you want people to have that made it this far is?
Make data-driven decisions, not feelings-based ones.
Yep. Yeah. Collect the data, audit your time, look at what you actually have in front of you, what makes sense to delegate, and then do it. And look at it as an investment, not as a cost. Because if you're looking at it as a cost, it's going to be harder for you to pull through.
Yeah, I mean, I also would say, like, just the more you can take, not emotion, and I don't mean emotion out of the whole company, right? Like, it's emotional to take care of clients. You want the joy of doing a good job. You want to have pride in the quality of work. But when it comes to database decisions, you need to take your emotions out of it as much as possible. And even as you continue to grow, like, being able to get feedback that might hurt your feelings, you need to be able to assess that logically and not put feelings in it. I got called out 2 weeks ago by someone that I want to coach me for not living up to the standard that he set. And I was kind of pissed off about it first, especially because it was all in a written message. And so there's no tonality. And the more I read it, the more pissed off that voice got in my head while I was reading it. But then I literally responded professionally. And the guy was like, cool, I'm really excited to see you step up. He wasn't saying anything meanly. He was just being matter of fact and giving honest feedback.
Yeah. Well, and man, it's funny to me that I think some of the people I care about the most, I'm the hardest on, and the people that care about me the most are the hardest on me.
I mean,
there's
I know
that
too. That's definitely the case with us. I mean, you and I are probably more brutally honest with each other than we are with our significant others a lot of times.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it's because both of us have high regard of our potential ourselves, and we see the same thing in each other. So we both feel the, I don't even think it's a want. I think we feel obligated to push each other to do better.
Absolutely.
Which is what friends are for. Real ones.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we will wrap this up. For those of you that stayed this long, thank you for listening. Check out our free Facebook page. This will be on YouTube and Spotify and all the podcast platforms. And we appreciate you sticking around this long. come check out our Facebook group, come hang out with us, and we'll see you on the next one.